Hello everyone, welcome back to JD Bots. This is the bot series on multi-cloud chatbot. In our last session, we had connected CLU with the custom question answering and shown you how you can navigate the conversation between CLU and custom question answering. So let me show you the main dialog where we had made that change. So here, when CLU result are recognized, we are checking if the top intent is having the score of 90%, then only come to the switch statement where we have written all our intents. If the score is not 90%, it will go to the else part and call the custom question answering service and get back the result. Alright, so in this session, we are going to implement, or basically, we are going to connect a database that is SQL DB to our multi-cloud chatbot. This is one of the requirement that I got from one of the viewers like you in the comment section. All right, so let's get started. We'll be getting started with the local SQL DB first, and then we'll move that to the Azure SQL DB. All right, so let's get started. The first thing that you need to make sure in order to connect to your local SQL DB from your Visual Studio, you need to enable this particular option, that is data storage and processing, while installing the Visual Studio. Once you have installed this payload or individual component, then when you click on view, you can see this option, SQL Server Object Explorer, right? And here you can connect to your local SQL Server. So if you open the SQL Server, it will already be showing you what local server is running and what is the database that it is running. So this is my server name, localdb/project models. What I'll do, I'll just connect to this server first. This does not require any password. Okay, so let's get started. In order to connect to that first, I need to first create a database. I'll name this as Multicloud DB. So once I have created the database on my local, I can easily migrate that to the cloud. So that process also we'll be looking at later. So I have my multi-cloud DB, and the first table that I would like to create is a list of all the locations in the cloud, specifically for the Azure. So if I can open, let's say, Azure locations. Alright, so this is the command that will get me display name, latitude, longitude, and name. Alright, so make sure you have the Azure CLI installed and you have also logged in. AZ account list O table. Okay, perfect. We got it. And while working with the resources, the cloud resources, Azure cloud resources, we will be needing this name property a lot while creating resources or modifying resources. Okay, and let's see what I'll do. I'll copy paste this data, ask ChatGPT to write a SQL insert script so that I can just quickly put that to my table. Okay. Let me increase the maximum length. Now let me copy it from the beginning. First, I'll be copying the create table script. Okay, let me ask one more question. Okay, so it has added the primary key constraint. Let me copy this particular query first. If I right click on my database, I can click on new query and paste it. Make sure you run in your database. You do not select the master database. Incorrect syntax, auto increment. Let's see if this works. Yes. And I can just copy paste this particular error. Okay. Why I'm just asking ChatGPT is because I'm not that expert in database queries. I always forget the syntax. Okay, the table is ready. If I just reload my database, and there you have the regions table. What I'll do, let me drop the table and use the capital letters. What's the syntax? I think drop table. Okay, it is gone. Let me just add regions. Okay, it has run successfully. Now I can make use of this insert query. I need not assign the ID column because it will automatically set the value. All right, that is all. Let me just run this piece of query. 81 rows affected. Is that 81 columns only? Let's see. I can also view the data from here and edit it live. So yes, I have all of it. Perfect. Let me save this query in our project. Let's say, let me create a new folder. All right, this seems to be fine. Now we'll be connecting our bot with this database. Okay, we have run these queries in our local SQL DB and inserted all the regions entries. There are 81 records. Now what we will do, we will connect our bot application with a local SQL DB. To start with, I'll go through my old post that I have written. Okay, so this is the blog post that I had written long time back and it is still valid. I use this post as my reference for most of my projects and especially the first part of it, that is read data from DB using entity framework. So to get started with, either you need data storage and processing toolset or you need SQL Server Management Studio. We picked up the first option and we have already created our database and table. We do not need SQL Server Management Studio. If you're working on SQL Server Management Studio, you can always pick up that. Now we need to install few dependencies. One of them is Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. Just right click on dependencies, manage NuGet packages, browse and install. The next one in the list is Microsoft Entity Framework Core Tools. And the finally, Microsoft Extensions Configuration JSON. I guess this one is not required. We can ignore this for now. Once we have installed it, we need to run this scaffold command. Let me copy paste this command in my notepad. In here, you need to provide your database server. Currently, it is localDB slash project models. If you're working on MS SQL localDB, then you can pick up the another one. And this is the database, that is Multicloud DB. This is the folder where all your model classes, basically whichever table you have in your database, that will be converted to the model classes, and that will be stored in this models folder. Alright, so let's do this. Copy. And how you can run this command? Click on Tools, go to NuGet Package Manager, click on Package Manager console and paste it here and run. Make sure before you run, or if you have multiple projects in your solution, you select the right project in the default project, else it will not work. It will still work, but you will end up creating these model classes and connecting to database from your another project. Okay, so now it shows me that this connection string is now currently hard coded in the code. We need to make sure that we put it in app settings or development, or your app settings configuration file. Since this is a local DB, we can of course put it in app settings.json. If it was Azure DB or you are directly working on the Azure environment, then yes, you can put it in Key Vault, the setup we have already done with this project. And after we run the command, let me show you what files it has generated. If we go to the models, and there you see two files are generated. One is multi-cloud DB context and one is the region. I was thinking if I can move them to a different location, like a separate project, so that I do not have everything inside this multicloud.bot project. So yep, let me do that. Let me delete this models folder. So if at all you end up creating, like running this command to a wrong project, so this is what you need to do: delete the models folder. Or if you already have a models folder in your solution or in your project, then delete only the files that are created by this database query, this scaffold query. So what I'll do this in the common project, or yeah, not, let's not do there. Let me create all together a new project, and I'll just search for class library. I'll name this as multi-cloud data, sorry, multi-cloud dot data. Next, Choose the .NET version and create the project. Okay, let's get rid of this file, and in multicloud bot just run that query multicloud.data. So I have selected my default project as multicloud.data, and let me run this query. Okay, before that I need to make sure that I install those two libraries, that is SQL Server and another one is Tools. Alright, and as it was showing me that error that I need to reference this multicloud.data from my multicloud.bot project. Click on dependencies, add project reference. I select multicloud.data. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, there we have. Now if I open multicloud.data, we have our model class created, and this is the class file. So it has created the properties based on my column that I have given. Before continuing, we need to make sure that we do not hard code this. So what I'll do, I'll just remove this from here, go to my bot project, go to app settings or development, then add connection string object. So I'm just giving the name of my property multicloud db and just saving this connection string. All right, so now how I can pass on the connection string here. So you can just get rid of this warning statement, and here before that let's add the I configuration. All right, now I can refer all the properties part of my app settings. What I need to do, configuration. I can do this as well, square bracket, and give the property name, that is first the object name colon project property name, and I can also do it like this, configuration dot get connection string, and I can just provide the connection string property, that is multicloud db. Okay, yep, that is all here is required. Now coming to the bot class, how we will show this data in our chatbot. For that, what we can do, let's go to main dialog. Let me auto hide this window so that I have more space. So I can get started by adding the regions intent in my language studio. I found an issue with regard to the intent names. I was using the standard like a category and what is the operation that I want to perform. For example, resource group dot read, resource group dot create, right? So it was not working or it has stopped working suddenly. So I had to clear those two intents from here. So what I'll do in the Lewis, what happened that if we provide dot here in the portal, then we can use underscore in the application side. But for this case, it did not work. So what I'll do, regions underscore read. Here only I'll just pass on the underscore. Select the intent and just add some sample utterances. For example, get me the list of all regions. Okay, let's save, start the training job. I'll overwrite my existing model so that I need not change my configuration in my key vault. By the time this is loading, go back to CLU, Multicloud, add your intent here. Okay, this seems to be fine. Now if I go to main dialog, I can add a new case statement and I can select my intent, and here I can perform my operation. For that to happen, what I'll do, I'll create my interface inside the Azure storage so that if when I migrate this project to Azure, then yes, I know where to find it. Next, let me create a services class. Let me rename this to service, not services. Okay, let's go back to Azure SQL Service and let's inherit from our Azure SQL Service. All right, yeah. First step, of course, we need a constructor. We need configuration. Okay. The next thing is I need to call the data project. Basically, initialize the DB context over here. So let's do that. All right, we are done initializing our context. Now I can just read the data. Let me see if I have my GitHub Copilot installed because that will help me a lot. in writing my code faster. We do have GitHub Copilot chat in Visual Studio. That seems to be nice. Okay, let me install this by closing my Visual Studio. And since this training job is completed, let me deploy this model. I'll overwrite an existing deployment, select the model and deploy. Okay, this gave me an example how I can read the data. So here I just need regions, sorry, just the region, context dot region to list. And that is the only method that I need. So I'll just name this as get regions async. Okay. Now I can copy this method definition, put it in my interface. Let's go back to program.cs file and let me add my new service. Now we can easily call our method from the main dialog. Since this is not a utility service because I have to get my Azure storage service here. Now I can call any method from that service. Get regions async. No overload for method takes two arguments. That is fine because we did not send anything. And I can also show the data in a card, or I can just convert this to JSON string and print on the chat window. So let's do that first. So let's not, okay, let's not use for loop. Let's send another response. Okay, this seems to be fine. Just comma separated values of the name. Let's see if I can use other property, that is the short name. Yeah, this is the correct property, name. Once that is done, I can just break it and that is all. Let's start the chatbot and test this out. Okay, let's test this out. There it is. There you see the response that we got from the database. So yes, that is all. That's the starting point of connecting to the database and getting some data. And of course, you can just send the data back to the database. How you can do it? Just add your method or you can also view specific data using ID. So if you have a primary key, you can use the method to retrieve it. For example, let me read specific. Okay, let me just get region by ID. This is the one. Okay, so this is one of the method. Yeah, there are a few libraries available that automatically creates the methods out of your model classes. So basically, it can perform all the CRUD operations by looking at your SQL DB schema and generate method. That we'll discuss some other time, but for now, yeah, that is all from my side. Thanks, everyone.